Welcome all. This is another Tuesday night of show and share. We're going to show off our projects, whether they be complete or in progress, whether we learn something along the way, aka fail, or maybe we just need a little help in getting there. So I'm going to kick it off with Russell, and I have to say it was kind of dark when I read this, and it looked like fudge art. Huh? What? Forge art knife.
So a couple of weeks ago, I took the 101 class in the Forge and made a nail and took the principles that I learned there and created just art. It's a knife, sort of. But the principles that I used, that I learned, one of the things that we learned was how to square off. This started out as a round piece of rebar. There you can see that it was round and bent, so of course I had to square it off and then, pounding it out there. I guess it doesn't like the, anyway, everybody knows what it looks like. Yeah, now you know what it sounds like, right. I squared it off and I put a tip on the end by hammering at an angle to create the pyramid shape on the end, and then of course just bang the heck out of it to flatten it out, and then brought it inside and used the sander to shape it a little bit around the edges and put somewhat of a blade on it, but it's not really sharp enough to cut anything. Excuse me, I'm sorry. But that is my first try at the Forge after having taken the class. That's not a handle? I don't know. I think it's a little short. Maybe on my next try I will try to elongate. I think I was asking about how to elongate it next time and make it more knife shaped, less like a jailhouse shiv or a blade. But I'll pass it around.
Thank you, Russell. All right, how about Russell number 2? Well, another Russell, we'll put it that way. He could never be number 2. Yeah, after dark illumination device.
Sounds suspiciously like a lamp. What are you talking about? I wondered after I named this an after dark illumination device. Actually, after dark, it's light, right? So that's a fail. It's not really an after dark. It is for the dark. And Billy was right. It's a lamp. So I was able to score. These are sure enough glass Tiffany style shades at Carm. Got 4 of them for like 11 or 12 bucks. And I thought, I've got to do something with these. So I didn't realize as I was making it that the shades were going to be very small for the lamp, or the lamp was going to be too large for the shade. But I went with it anyway. So this is actually a candle holder. Had to drill a hole up through this part to get the wires up in there. After that, it wasn't too difficult. And then seal the bottom. I don't know if you can see this or not. Let me zoom out. There we go. So I put a piece in the bottom to seal up the connections I made in there. Since I had to have room for the wire, I put these little bolts on here so it would sit up. And then finagled everything. Like I say, this one's nothing special, just something I threw together in the shop, and then it actually lights up as a night light. So there you have it. There was no glass drilling involved. That's kind of an inside joke. Yeah.
Are you making it get lighter and darker, or is
Yeah.
it a touch? Oh.
It's magic, yeah. It's magic.
Favorite question. How long did it take?
Ah. Okay, including fret time, probably 6 hours. Worked on it yesterday, finished it up today. But that's, I don't know about you all, but that's a major portion of anything I make, the fret time, thinking, okay, I'll do this. Nah, that won't work, I'll do that. That always, am I the only one that does that? Okay, all right. Any other questions?
Yes, you said you got 4 of them. Was it part of a larger light fixture?
No, it was just the shades by themselves. And so I couldn't pass that up because I don't know, they're not Tiffany, but they're certainly Tiffany style with glass instead of plastic. I don't try to get things that are made out of plastic. I always go for brass, glass, metal, stay away from stuff made in China or that comes from Hobby Lobby, try to get old stuff. I haunt estate sales, Carm, thrift stores, that kind of thing. You can find some pretty cool stuff doing that, including this shirt. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Russell. Next up, we have Todd with the laser cut something.
Hi. So I work in a laser shop during the day, and this afternoon, I decided to take one of our lasers and do a little R&D work with it. And so some designs that I had come up with, I thought I'd bring them in and show them off. We painted the boards yellow, obviously, for these first, and then etched them out on the laser and washed them, clear coated them, and let them dry. These have gone through drying. They will get magnets on the back probably tomorrow when I go back in. But the other thing I did today, which was really cool that we haven't done yet, he's my boss over there. So he hasn't even seen these yet. I'm showing him for the first time too. So I took our same boards, and we had these boards in the shop that had stood up the wrong way, and they got a real bad bow in them. So I sprayed them down a couple weeks ago, put some weights on them, and let them flatten back out. They're still pretty bowed, but I got them cut to where I could actually use them in the laser, and so they are now scrap wood. So I played with some stains today, and I stained them, kind of just splatter pattern, stained them and slapped it around. And I came up with these, and they look kind of tie-dye. Aha! There we go. So yeah, they kind of came out tie-dyed and cool looking, so we're going to try more, a little brighter next time, I think, on the colors. I think that's the only failure thing I've got here, but these came out really cool. So, anyway.
How did you get the raised color different from the background color?
When the laser cuts, I'm just applying the stain to the very top and letting it just dry, just to a surface dry, so that when I go and throw it in the laser, it actually cuts through all of that and gets back down to wood. And
Before you laser.
yes, yeah, I stain it before I laser it. So, anyway, cool. Thank you.
That was really great. Too bad John Dale's not here to see something in the laser. Hi, John Dale. Okay, next we have James with the jet airplane. Somehow I don't think you'll be bringing it up to the podium. Ah. Oh, wow.
This here is a fan jet, and if you look into the tail of it, you might be able to see the fan that it powers it. The motor is about an inch in diameter and about an inch and a half long is all the bigger the motor is. The fan itself is about 3 to 3.5 inches in diameter, and I'm going to start it up and just run it at a low speed, because if I run it at a high speed, it's very loud. Come here and plug this in for me, would you please? Like that. Plug that into there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. Push it, yeah, that's it. And as you might have heard, the unit syncing up with the receiver. And so now the thing is to take this here, we'll turn it on, and you can hold it up. Okay, so here's the ailerons. And then the elevators. Then the tail, rudder. Then I'll start the engine and run it at a small speed so that it's not so loud. That's about fourth throttle, and it'll have plenty of power. I showed the guys out there how I had them hold it when I gave it full throttle, and it was quite loud and kind of irritating. But when it's full throttle, you really have to hold on to that thing to keep it from getting away from you. It's pretty powerful, so it flies pretty fast. Top speed on that is about 100 miles per hour. So that's.
Do you fly it from baseball fields, soccer fields?
I belong to the flight group Blount County Aviation Group, and they have a field at the Maryville dump out there. And it's a paved field, and it's about 320 feet long. Maybe not that long, maybe about 200 feet. Maybe that's good. But it's about 25 to 30 foot wide, and that's where they fly all their planes and drones and stuff like that. And our club has some of the best pilots in the world in it. We've got one guy that flies drones that has been in contests all over the world and has won all of the contests. And as far as acrobatics and speed and all the things that he does with it, I saw on YouTube a video of him flying his drone inside his house, underneath tables, underneath chairs, all around the kitchen, every place inside there, and without crashing the thing. And it was zooming. And I'll tell you what, he is something else. He can fly it upside down all around like that. He's just a natural. And another guy in our club came in second place in a lower class than what he was in, but he came in second place on drones also. And we got a couple other guys in our club that are top regular airplane controllers, and they make their airplanes sit still and they can land on their tail like this and then take off again vertically and go do all sorts of stuff that it's just unbelievable to watch those guys fly. It's so much fun.
So did you put that together?
No, this here was pre-built. I did have to assemble some parts of it, but the basic unit was pre-built, and I had to put the engine in and the electronics and connect all up the mechanical features and put those on.
What's the range on it for your remote control and stuff? Before it
The range of the controller here, I've got a good controller, and so this range of this is about 1 mile. But I don't leave the airplane get more than maybe a quarter of a mile away from me. And the flight time is about 15 to 20 minutes.
will it just keep going if you overshoot your remote?
Yes, and there's things that you can do in your controller so that if it gets out of range of the controller, it senses that and goes into a whatever mode that you set up in your airplane. And in the receiver there, you set up this so that it maybe comes down to a slower speed and maybe circles and so forth like that, and so that it won't just keep going. It'll slow down and circle, and of course you don't have any control of where it's going to land, but at least it's not going to get away from you. So those are controllable features that you can put in there. Also in my controller, I can see how much current the motor's pulling, and at full throttle, it's between 60 and 70 amps of current that is pulling off of the battery. And that's quite a bit of current on just a small electric battery inside that thing. And it has a temperature sensor on there so that if the motor overheat, it'll ring an alarm on my receiver here. And so it's got temperature sensor, amperage sensor, voltage sensor as far as the main battery is concerned, and also a voltage sensor as far as the receiver is concerned. And of course, if the receiver voltage gets too low, then of course that's when you lose your airplane. But if the battery for the airplane gets too low, the motor, then of course it just slows down until it stops. But there's features in there that are programmable.
What battery size?
Let me show you the battery. This is the battery, and it's a 4-cell, and it's at 5,200 milliamp hours is the rating on it, which is 5.2 amps for 1 hour. So if you multiply, if you're pulling 60 amps, then you divide 1 hour by 60, and so you can't run at full speed very long. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you for that high flying project, I guess.
Oh, by the way, I'm building a platform to hold this transceiver in, so that with one arm I can use it to fly my airplane, not have to hold on to it while I'm flying.
Okay.
I'm building a holder for that.
So we might see a platform in show and share in the future that holds that controller. That's great. Well, we're going to get out of the wood shop and we're going to go over to Bay 1. Thea, you've got a crochet color tips for us.
Yeah, but there's the echo.
You want me to power off and back on? We can just leave it.
All right. I started off with this pattern, but it was all in white. And I had a Christmas ombre that I thought would be absolutely cool. And they always tell you when you're dealing with any type of fiber arts project to buy all of your yarn or thread in the same color lot. And this is an illustration as to why. I started off and I made the jacket and I made the bonnet and I realized I didn't have enough yarn left. So I went back to the store and they changed their dye lot. So we're in the army and our pants are a little faded. And just as a point of illustration, this is a much older dye lot. It's the exact same yarn, but they used more white and the green is completely different. So I'll pass the booties around. I just made them out of some scraps I had left. So always buy extra if you're gonna try any type of project, because you can make small stuff later, but it really looks weird if you're trying to make a whole set. And a couple of other ways you can use color, even if your pattern is black and white, is you can either stop and use the last round as your color, or you can use your color as your main and then just add afterwards. So these are a much older project, but that's the one I just finished. And I set it down a couple of times, and that's why we have so many different dye lots. And I have absolutely no idea how long it took me. Any questions?
Who'd you make that for?
I used to craft and send almost all of my stuff to a charity called Newborns in Need, but they kind of dissolved during the pandemic, so I'm not quite sure what I'm doing with it. Nobody in my family is currently expecting.
The color transition from the very first with mostly white to the next is huge. That's huge. Next up, we have Rob Scott with Alpha Omega.
So I was asked by a very famous lamp company in town called Alpha Omega. You've probably seen some of their work. They make lights. Russell, one of the members, is here right now. And so he showed me this logo, and we were talking about embroidery, and so I digitized his logo for him and then ran it in embroidery. So that was his original logo, and just for scale, you can see my finger. So it's about a shirt size. As a matter of fact, here, I'll hold it up just so you can see, right? But that, what I do is, these are revisions. Bring it back down a little bit here. These are revision numbers. So as I'm digitizing it, this is it took me 3 revisions in software before I felt that I'm gonna commit it to thread, because I could see the problems when I would stitch it out in the computer, but I didn't wanna lose as I went. And by the time I got to about 4, I was like, I'm gonna commit that to thread. The problem with 4, as soon as I saw it stitching, I could tell this bottom part especially became what you call bulletproof. They call it bulletproof because there's too many stitches in too small a space, so it becomes like a bulletproof jacket. Is that it's so dense. It's no longer flexible. You can really feel it. And if you were to put that on a shirt, it holds its shape kind of funny. So once I saw it was doing that, I basically did this by hand, basically stripped it all out and then redid this to make it a lot more flexible. It actually cut the number of stitches in half. I'm still not 100% happy with it. You know, Russell and I were talking about changes I might do, plus he wants to potentially put on a black shirt, maybe with gold thread, so I told him, I'll do this in black for the next iteration. It'll be probably iteration 5, 6, or 6, 7, or 8 as I play with it a little bit more. I'd like to pull out some of these things, like I really like that knot, and you can see it's there, but it's not really there. So I want to try to pull that out. But it's a lot of fun. I like the challenge of digitizing a very complex logo into a very small space. So, but that's my embroidery project. All right.
Thank you, Rob. And just as a extension of that, many of you may know that we applied for a grant. This grant is going to give us some equipment in the shop, one of which is a new embroidery machine, and we are getting the same one that Rob used to do that embroidery work. So, yeah. We also get some welding machines, some, and some glass cutting equipment as well. Was there something else too, Sean? It seems like there was something else for large format printer. Yeah. A CNC router as well. Yeah. Next up is Gabe with PVC tin whistle.
All right, so I'm sure everybody has at least seen a tin whistle or had their ears made to bleed with a tin whistle. They don't have to do that. So I started making my girlfriend's ears bleed probably about a week and a half ago when I started learning the instrument, and I figured, you know, I've got a membership to Knox Makers, there's a bunch of tools in there, I bet I could make one of these. And so I did some research, and I was able to find some plans online that this guy from Italy had posted about how to make them out of PVC. I do plan on trying to move this into other materials at some point. Probably stick to the plumbing section of the hardware store. Use some copper pipe I want to try out. This is my first one though. I made this Saturday. As for how long it took me, probably about 3 hours of total work, and I think that after a few more that could be much faster. I am hoping to teach a class on this once I have it a bit more figured out. But the only materials in this are a little bit of wood dowel, and then I used, rather than just PVC pipe, I used CPVC, like is used for hot water plumbing. That was mainly because for the same inner diameter on paper, it's actually a little bit smaller and it has thinner walls, and so those are just a couple things that make it easier to use. I will go ahead and show you what this sounds like now. I will say, tuning this a little bit sketchy. If anybody in here has perfect pitch, sorry. Thank you. Any questions?
Definitely not 3 blind mice, dude.
Not 3 blind mice. Questions? Yes. So the first thing you do, you have to make the mouthpiece and everything. You have to make sure you're making a sound first. And then what I did was I just sanded about 1 millimeter at a time away from the end and that allows you to tune your low note, which in this case is D. This is in the key of D major. And then there are, in the plans, there were some percentages listed about how far away the holes for each note need to be from your lip. in there, and that'll vary a little bit, but there are also calculators online to help with that. What you do, though, is you drill the hole under size, try to get the location pretty well spot on, and then to actually tune the note, it'll start out flat, and you just make the hole slowly bigger and bigger to walk that note in. And there's 2 octaves that can be played. You just blow a little bit harder, and then you jump into a second octave. And the tuning works a little bit different between those. So you do need to, at some points, make some compromises between your upper and lower octave. Usually your lower octave notes are a little bit flat, upper octave a little bit sharp, just to kind of have everything as close as possible. Some whistles do have a mouthpiece that can slide back and forth. That just allows you to lengthen the tube, which allows you to tune to other instruments if you're trying to play with other instruments. This one does not do that, but I am going to try to add that into some later ones. Anything else? The dowel is used to, I don't know if you can see that very well. You make a plug to go inside. So the construction of this, you have just your tube that you cut a slot into for your windway, and then you file the lip, which is what's splitting the air and causing the noise. And then you take your dowel, which is a little bit oversized, so you have to very slowly sand it and try to keep it round so that you get a relatively snug fit there. And then this is just another piece of the PVC that's cut that snaps over top, and that is going to be your mouthpiece construction. And you can make certain adjustments to affect the overall timbre of the whistle. You can make it a little bit more breathy, quieter, louder, a little bit more like piercing, ear bleedy. Yeah. Anything else? All right.
And that's the end of the people who signed up. Is there anybody else who would like to show something? Come on up. It's Klaus, if I remember correctly.
Hello, everybody. I don't like that as a background. I'm gonna make it the right one. Okay, I got a pepper grinder. It's called segmented turning. You cut the wood in little triangles, glue them together to a circle, and do that for however many layers you make. Most people try not to show off the glue lines. I said, I'm gonna be bold. I'm gonna put dark veneer in there and show exactly where one piece ends and the next one starts. And as a little extra feature, I put a stair step in there in walnut. All the other pieces are maple. There's only one problem with that design. People are turning it, trying to line it up. Oops! It happens all the time. One of the more recent pepper mills I'm working on, still in the makes, is a different kind of design. It's not assembled yet. I took a square block of walnut, maple veneer, a thin piece of purple heart, another maple veneer, and the outside is walnut again. And by combining the shapes and the way I glue it together, it comes up with that design. Yeah, there I goofed a little bit. I got a little bit too deep. I wasn't quite in the center. So That's my design. Any questions? Yes, please.
So after you do that, you have to hollow out the middle. Is there a mechanism that goes in there? That
Yes,
does the grinding?
yes. You can buy different mechanisms for it. Some of them are stainless steel, some of them are ceramics, and you just mount it inside.
Do you glue it in there, or is
No, it's screwed in. It's actually with tiny little screws goes in there.
can you show the bottom of it where the pepper comes out?
Absolutely. Catch? No, just kidding.
Achoo! I meant in the viewer so everyone can see it.
Oh, it's a little bit hard to show there.
Where did you get the grinding artist?
Let's see. Oh, there it goes. That's the bottom part.
And are
And-
those the screws you were referring to?
Yeah, they're right here on the sides. I'm trying to get the light right.
Where do you load it from?
From the top. You unscrew the top. And that's where I load it from.
So I have a very old one, and I find when I add the peppercorns, I have to make sure that spindle is in the center. Otherwise, it's really hard to get it in back to the center.
Where do you get those grinder parts?
You can get them at Woodcrafts in Knoxville on Kingston Pike. There's several online places as well. Anybody who sells wood turning equipment or wood turning project parts, you'll find it.
Anything else? Yeah, Toby? Oh, I gotcha. I won't, I gotcha.
Oh, okay. Cleaning up the mess.
Sorry, I made you disassemble.
So, while I was on vacation last week, I went ahead and played around with my new scanner that I mentioned the last time I was up here. Are we ready? So, I had to borrow something small for my nephew. So what I did was I borrowed one of his little small D&D figures of a troll. And this is about 3 inches tall. And then I went ahead and scanned it, and I come out with, even though he don't have a thumb, I think it did a pretty good job on the texturing and the actual figure itself. Because between the two, you've got all the artifacts and everything on him as well. So for a $700 scanner, I think it did pretty good. So, and that's all I wanted to show.
Thank you, Toby. And we have someone in the back.
Hi, I'm Scott, everybody. I wanted to share a little automotive project, fuel tank repair, and a 3D tool made here with the help of some members. So, let me see. This is a car I just picked up. It's a 1991 Audi 200. They don't make that model anymore, but so it's a 30-year-old car, and had to do a lot of repairs, a little bit more than I was expecting to it. There's another shot. I actually bought it in Utah, in Salt Lake City, planning to drive it back and just road trip it back, make an adventure out of it. But it'd been sitting a little bit longer than I was led to believe. So I had some fuel issues driving through the Rockies. Kind of got to a point where it was just getting slower and slower. Just issue was it had no power. It would start idle, but had no power. You know, accelerating, going up hills, heavy load. So this is let me see if I can zoom in some there. That's a shot of the fuel tank inside. So you're kind of looking at the fuel pump there, and like all that brown there, that's all rust inside the fuel tank. There's another shot. You can see some of the sediment down there, and a little piece of the old previous owner's glove when he tried to repair it previously. Well, he said he put a fuel pump in it, but kind of neglected to mention the rest. So you can kind of see the line around the edge there where the fuel level was sitting. So this is kind of my attempt to repair the fuel tank and get it going again. That's the fuel level sender, so you can kind of see a little bit more of the corrosion there on the metal. Does everybody see that okay? So luckily I had access to a shop. This is a Audi, so nothing's really simple. You have to, fuel tank sits above the rear axle, so I dropped the whole rear axle out, suspension, differential. There it is, kind of sitting there under, behind the car. So then you take the fuel tank out after that. So there's a picture of the fuel tank. Now I've got it out of the car. And there you can kind of see, it just looks like mud. That's the fuel inside the fuel tank. There's another shot of just the rust sediment, along with the picture of his glove and everything there. And that's where the fuel pump sits. That's inside the fuel basket. So all of that sediment, rust, debris was blocking up the inlet to the fuel pump. It's got like a filter screen on it, so it just couldn't get any flow through it. So that was really my main issue there. So what I did was, this is after pressure washing it. I pressure washed it one night. I got a lot of the kind of flaky stuff off of there. And then I kind of treated it. I did buy a gallon of rust dissolve, but it's a 21-gallon tank, so at $30 a gallon, that really wasn't going to be too effective for me. But I did try that once. I put some chains in there, tried to slosh it around, but then I kind of moved on to vinegar. So I went to Sam's Club, bought 10 gallons of vinegar, did 5 gallons scrubbing, cleaning, and then cleaned that all out, did another 5 gallons. So that actually worked pretty well. Yeah, let's see. Let's see. There you can see a little bit better. So it's coming out of there, but you can still see a lot of rust. I think it's just the lighting, really. Let's see. Okay, so this is kind of after doing the vinegar washes, and I did some metal prep on there, and then you basically buy like a Pour 15 kit, and so it's got like a metal etcher, and then it's finally got like a sealant in there. So this is actually after I poured the sealant in there. You kind of roll it around, and that's the inside of the fuel tank there. So now it's actually pretty coated. I don't have to worry about fuel or rust particles clogging up the fuel pump. So this is kind of what I really wanted to show was I had to make this tool, which I did here. This is a special tool for locking the fuel pump in place. And it was I just found a file online. Somebody else copied it from the actual Volkswagen tool. So what it does is lock the fuel pump. There's upper and a lower half. And you can see the lines here, you can see where they're lined up. And then you basically twist it a quarter turn, and you'll see those lines move in the next picture. So that's just a top view. The fuel pump will sit inside that aluminum housing there. but it has a place for a socket on the top, a ratchet or a wrench you can turn it with. So then you can see now it's locked in place where the two lines are separated. It's fine to do outside of the car. You can kind of do it by hand, but once the fuel tank is in the car and you're reaching down in there with one hand, you can't really get any leverage on it, which is why you need the tool. So that's kind of it in there afterwards. And now that's with the fuel pump installed, the wiring, the supply return line. It's like the light's kind of giving it a little. Very good. So I just want to say kind of thank you to Cooper and everyone else who kind of helped me print that tool. And it's back in the car, it's running, it's driving, good power, so it's working well. So, thank you. Any questions? Oh yeah. It took about a month. So I had to kind of do it twice. Luckily I had access to a shop, but I couldn't leave it apart in the shop. So I'd take the rear axle out, take the fuel tank, clean the fuel tank. I put the rear axle back in while I'm cleaning the tank and everything, and then do it again. Take the axle back out, put it back in again once I got the tank all clean. So it was basically, I just finished it over July 4th weekend, so I had a couple long weekends, but mostly it was just nights of scrubbing and cleaning, and I did seal and kind of prep the outside of the tank also. I didn't show that, but there was some rust on the outside too. I got a quote from Volunteer Radiator. They do some radiator repairs, fuel tank repairs, and they said about $500 for them just to do the tank, which is it's probably worth every penny of that, honestly, because it took a while. It took a while, So, but I got away with buying a couple gallons of vinegar and some kind of long nights. But yeah. Any other questions? They have a lot of racing history, racing pedigree. That model, there was actually less than 2,000 imported to the U.S. for that year, and that year they only came with the engine that has. It's a 5-cylinder turbo engine. It's got 20 valves, so they only imported that engine to the U.S. 1 year, and that's it. So I'd say there's probably less than 1,000 of those cars left now, but they did have a lot of success in the late 80s, early 90s with that engine, racing that car. So there is a lot of enthusiasts out there, and I just like old Audis. I have a couple of them, and I'm just kind of into those kind of cars. But yeah, you don't see too many of them, so it is kind of very niche, kind of an enthusiast market. But the idea was try to buy one cheap that needed some work, because they are going up in value. So they are collector cars, All right. Thank you.
Thank you. It sounds like we had cars, we had planes, we had fiber, we had lights. A little bit of everything tonight. Yes, do you have something to share? Aha, when we're not done yet.
Sorry, this isn't a real show and share. I was making hot sauce before I left the house, like literally 10 minutes before I left the house. And I had a little extra. It's pretty hot. If anybody wants some, hot sauce.
I don't know which is better, the chocolate chip cookies that came last week or some hot sauce. Right. All right. Well, thank you for all that shared. We're going to move on to our announcements now. We have classes. We just got an opening, Tracy. I think it might still be an opening for the Inkscape 101 class. If you're interested in taking that on the 16th, message Tracy. Her other classes sold out. We have a new member onboarding Thursday night at 7. And for those new members, when you're in trial, we ask that you attend one new member onboarding as part of becoming a member. We have a Woodworking 101 class on the 17th, 10 to noon. Not to be outdone by the board meeting that afternoon, 2 to 4. I noticed that the MIG welding class was sold out, but there's a TIG welding class on the 23rd. You can also go to knoxmakers.org and look at our events page to get other events that were out there further out into the future. One of the big ones is one that David is helping us make, and that's the Maker Market on August 14th from 10 to 3. Did you want to add any new information, David?
There are a few spots still, quite a fair amount of vendor spots still available. Still looking for volunteers at any point, and we have all the food trucks booked that we need for it. So it's coming along.
All right. So, vendors, there's spots for vendors. What about people who just want to show off what they make?
There are also plenty of spots for that as well. We have
Okay.
about three or four folks who have been interested in that. So
Showing off.
if you have something you want to show off, like model airplane or hot sauce, anything like that, you're more than welcome to show up.
Or a whole bunch of refrigerator magnets, right? Now that's just showing them off, not selling them. Just showing them off, showing off the techniques. Okay, we also have something I think is going to be pretty fun coming up a little bit sooner. On August 2nd, Tuesday night, before our show and share, we're going to have a barbecue to celebrate our 12th anniversary. Woo! And John Dell is cooking. Yay! Thank you, John Dell. I'm glad you volunteered. Details to come. We thought it would be a real good way to celebrate 12 years. Right. Other announcements. We have totes here. If you don't already have your member storage items in a tote, please get them in a tote so they don't fall down or stick out where people trip over them or get whapped in the forehead. There is a charge for the totes. We are a nonprofit. We're all volunteers here. So I'd like to take some time to ask if anybody would like to teach a class. They're more than welcome to help teach classes. Or if you'd like to help us take out the trash tonight. Do I have a volunteer? Oh, how about you? All right, I don't know the name, sorry. Ben. And then we need somebody to maybe change the air filters. So somebody who's not afraid of heights or ladders. I'll take you up on that one. Okay. So we also have smile.amazon.com. If you shop, please put us as your donating person. It's really easy to do. And a small pittance of your purchase will come to us. Last quarter, we got $96. So that's enough to almost pay for our annual dues. Plus, as members, we get free shipping. So, yeah, this is really helping us out. Every little bit helps. Is there any other announcements I'm skipping over? Okay. If you're new here, see anybody with the red badge? I think the exception might be me. I don't have my red badge on. I forgot it. Oops. And you can get a tour. We can answer your questions about the shop, give you more information. And other than that, you're free to roam. Let's make.